Chapter 3. How's your pod racer coming along, Annie? His friend Kister asked as he stepped over a rusted land speeder turbine in Watto's junkyard. Anakin shot a startled look at the dark-haired boy. Keep your voice down, Anakin said in a low voice. You want Watto to find out? Kister lowered his own voice and said, Sorry, I forgot. How long have you been working on it? Almost 2 years, Anakin admitted as he picked up a worn gasket. You really think it'll fly? Once I get a few more parts, sure it will, Anakin said, tossing the gasket aside. Problem is, if I fly it, Watto will know I have it, and then he'll want to take it from me. I'll just have to keep it a secret and keep flying his cruddy pods. I'd like to try flying a pod racer someday, Kister said wistfully. Maybe you will. Anakin didn't want to hurt Kister's feelings, but he knew that his friend wouldn't last 5 seconds in a pod race. Operating a pod racer required incredibly fast reflexes, but competition was fierce, and Anakin, as far as anyone knew, was the only human ever to fly one and live. Despite this accomplishment, Anakin knew he'd have to do better to please Watto. In the more than half-dozen races he had competed in so far, he had crashed twice and failed to finish even once. The biggest challenge he had was dealing with Sebulba, the gangly, crook-legged, antagonistic Doug, who won often and cheated almost constantly. Sebulba never hesitated to force competitors off the course and had caused more than a dozen pilots to crash in the past year alone. Anakin thought, if it weren't for that cheat, I'd have won by now. Kister asked, Think you'll win the next race? Anakin shrugged. I'd be happy just to make it to the finish. Anakin turned to another pile of metal and found himself looking at a pair of slotted lenses that were surrounded by multicolored wires contained within a skull-shaped metal armature. Strangely, the lenses seemed to be staring back at him, and he realized they were burned-out photoreceptors. Hey, Kister, he said as he picked up the object. Look what I found. What is it? A droid head, Anakin said, brushing sand from the vocoder plate beneath the photoreceptors, which had served as the droid's eyes, and not a pit droid's either. The head's metal plating had been removed, and the exposed photoreceptors had a surprised, wide-eyed expression. He handed the head to Kister. It's pretty beat up, Kister observed. Maybe it was some kind of war droid? I don't think so, Anakin said as he looked around, hoping to find some other droid parts. The metal's pretty thin. Oh, wow! His gaze had fallen on what appeared to be the decapitated head's skeletal body, which lay in a tangled heap beside a pile of discharged fuel cells. Like the head, the body was without plating, but Anakin was delighted just the same. The whole structural framework's there. You know what this means, don't you? Kister thought hard. No. It means I can build my own... Boy! Watto's voice interrupted, calling from beyond the arch portal that separated the junkyard from his bell-shaped shop. Boy, where in this dump are you? Oh no, Anakin said, glancing at Kister and then back to the archway. Wait here. Trying hard to maintain a relaxed expression, he trotted out of the junkyard. Ah, there you are, Watto said when he sighted Anakin. Hovering outside the entrance of his shop, he spoke in Huttese. For a moment, I suspected you run away from Watto. Oh, and give you the pleasure of seeing my transmitter detonate? Pleasure? Watto said, his trunk-like nose turning slightly upward as if recoiling from Anakin's words. You think I like cleaning up exploded slaves? Bwah! When he was done laughing, he gestured with a 3-fingered hand at some more scrap-filled containers that had just been delivered and said, Now get back to work. I want the scrap sorted by noon. After Anakin had hauled the containers into the junkyard, he returned to where he left Kister with the droid parts. You're not telling what about the droid? Kister asked. I found him. He's mine, Anakin said as he began dragging the droid's body into an area shaped by large metal refuse where Watto was unlikely to notice it. Besides, Watto wouldn't be able to fix him. I'll smuggle him back home piece by piece. Handing the droid's head to Anakin, Kister said, But even if you get him to work, what will you use him for? Lots of things. Running errands, lifting stuff. Hey, what's this? He had found a line of small engraved lettering at the base of the droid's skull, and he held the head out so Kitster could see it too. Says here he's a Cybot Galactica protocol droid. Protocol? What's that good for? I don't know, Anakin admitted. I'll have to ask my mom. Hey, maybe he'll even help me and my mom leave Tatooine. Holding the droid's head in both hands, Anakin studied its mechanisms more closely. The balance gyro's ancient. I'm guessing 70 or 80 years old. I'll bet he saw a lot of action. Makes you wonder, how did he wind up like this? Anakin gazed into the droid's burnt-out eyes as if he might find more clues for the droid's history there, but he saw only the droid's frozen, startled expression. Don't worry, pal, Anakin thought. I'll take good care of you. It took 5 days of stealthy maneuvers for Anakin to move the droid's remains from the junkyard to his hovel. Except for Kitster, he told no one about the droid, but he should have told at least one other person, his mother, who was not happy to enter the hovel and find her son's latest project laid out in hundreds of dirty pieces on the dining table. Shmi had bought a small sack of dried vegetables at the market, and she placed them on the kitchen counter. Not wanting to look at the bizarre metal and wire skeleton that lay in a supine position on the table with its dead eyes staring at the ceiling, she averted her gaze from Anakin and the droid. Let me guess, she said. You found it? Yeah, pretty lucky, huh? And, well, I don't know anyone else in Mos Espa who'd be able to fix him up right. If I hadn't saved him from the scrap heap, he might have wound up smelted. When Shmi didn't respond, Anakin felt compelled to add, he's a protocol droid, Mom. Do you know what that is? Shmi took a deep breath and turned around to face Anakin. Protocol droids speak millions of languages. They're used as translators by diplomats. Oh, Anakin said. He could tell by the tone of his mother's voice that she thought they would have no use for a protocol droid. Hoping to convince her otherwise, he continued, Oh, that's great. He'll be really useful in the market if we want to trade with a merchant who doesn't speak basic. And just imagine how impressed visitors will be when he greets them at the door. I'm sure he'll be good at helping us in lots of other ways too. Shmi returned her attention to the vegetables. He'll need new photoreceptors, Anakin said. I think I can find some at Watto's shop. You're being careless, Annie, Shmi said with concern. Watto will be enraged if he learns you've taken an entire droid. But I had to do it, Mom. The moment I saw all the parts were there, I just knew I had to put them back together. Anakin gently gripped the droid's right forearm and lifted it up from the table, testing the flexibility of the elbow joint. Looking at him, all torn up and busted, it just makes me so sad. If protocol droids are good with languages and translating, I'll bet he was really smart. Anakin looked at the droid's face again. I'd also bet he didn't have a friend in the galaxy. Why else would he end up in a scrap heap on Tatooine? Maybe you talk too much, Shmi said. Aw, Mom, you'll hurt his feelings. The droid is a machine, Annie. It doesn't have feelings. How do you know? Anakin said, unable to keep the hurt from his voice. Maybe his owners were mean to him and didn't care what happened to him. Maybe he tried to escape. Maybe he was just like us. Shmi felt Anakin's sorrow and thought of the slave that had died while trying to escape 5 days earlier. She turned to her son, put her hands on his shoulders, and said, Promise me, Annie, when you find a new pair of photoreceptors for a new friend, you won't get caught. You mean, I can keep him? Shmi nodded as she surveyed the droid. It's clear to me now. You were meant to help this droid. You're a second chance. Thanks, Mom, Anakin said as he hugged his mother. When I get him to talk, I'll tell him to thank you too. No, Annie. After all, you'll be his maker. Just remember, the droid is your responsibility, and unless you're prepared to care for something, you don't deserve to have it. I won't forget, Anakin said. And one more thing, Shmi added in a severe tone. Yes, Mom? I want the droid off our dining table right now.